I think that you believe that art has the power to transform. In fact, I know that you believe that because you've heard about Street Symphony, you've seen the incredible visual artists here today, the writers, the musicians. I agree. I think that art can be absolutely transformative. It has been for me personally. But if you think about our culture houses, in my case, museums, that's the line of work I'm in, there's a little bit of an accessibility crisis. The work in our hallowed halls is very challenging. The challenging work isn't the problem, the hallowed halls are. I think it's imperative that we not dumb down the work, choose work that's maybe more palatable to a broader audience, but I do think that there are ways that as institutions we can really address visitor experience differently. And the Hammer Museum isn't the first to think about this. Many institutions are doing it. What makes our approach different is that we're doing it curatorially. The idea is to re-envision the museum experience through the lens of artists. So I have, I think, one of the coolest jobs on the planet. I get to work with incredibly brilliant artists to think through ways that we might do things a little bit differently. And initially we thought that we'd work with artists and they would come in and they'd say, oh, you've got to change the way you're doing ticketing. The way you're doing ticketing is all wrong. If you change that, it'll be more comfortable for visitors. Or your wayfinding, it's so confusing, let me redo that for you. But that's not how artists want to work. They like to complicate things sometimes to our benefit. And they also don't necessarily think of problems in the same linear way that some of us administrators do, which is the blessing of working with them. So I'll give you a little background on the kind of work we do with some specific examples, but there's one that I want to focus on specifically with you today that just wrapped up. That's, for me, the most poignant project we've done and also was very problematic for us. So as a starting point, I often use this image. I think it's pretty evocative for a couple of reasons, primarily because of the program. The little door that you see on the left-hand side is the door to our coat room at the Hammer Museum. And the man that you see in the center of the shot is Chris Kallmeyer, and he is part of the artist collective Machine Project, which is based here in Los Angeles in Echo Park. And his idea as a musician and a sound curator was to create micro concerts. So what would happen is you walk into the museum. As you can imagine, the coat room is one of the first areas that you approach, and you could walk into our coat closet, and for about 2 minutes, 1 or 2 people could have a concert performed by 1 or 2 people, micro concerts. It sounds totally novel. It is novel, but if you think about what the museum experience typically is, and then you juxtapose this, the intimacy of this experience, you could literally hear the intake of the musician's breath. You could hear their fingertips on their instrument. To start out an experience like that with a one-on-one human contact was really powerful. You would not believe how provocative it is for an institution to mess around with signage like this. This is another big deal that we allowed an artist to do something totally outside of the museum vernacular. So sometimes it's playful, sometimes it serves only a couple people. Other times we serve thousands. This is our lobby gallery where we used to show only Hammer Project exhibitions. This is work by emerging artists. The work typically doesn't look like this. This was an installation of the Libros Schmibros Lending Library and Used Bookstore based in Boyle Heights, where J. Michael, in the background there, you can see his incredible work. It really transformed the space into something that doesn't feel like your average gallery. And something that happened here is that's similar to what was going on in the coat rooms is really this idea that I'm very interested in of exchange. The museum experience has long been very didactic. We talk at you, we have a thing on the wall, we tell you what it is, and we tell you what to think about it. Now we're thinking about the communication, the back and forth that we have with one another much more. So this project was a great example of that. When I started at the museum as curator of public engagement, a little more than 2 years ago, I began to run the program. That's what I was hired to do. And shortly after I got there, I was approached by a Los Angeles artist, Lisa Ann Auerbach, who's very involved in our institution. In fact, her work's in our permanent collection and the permanent collection of many others in the country. And she had an idea for rethinking the guard uniforms. This seemed like a perfect fit. It would be a different experience for our visitors and our guards who had long reported feeling like they were sort of on the periphery of the institution. We thought this was a way to bring them in, not just bring them in, but bring them in to the curatorial fold, which would be really unique, something atypical for them. This is an example of Lisa's work that she's probably best known for, sweaters that are really political in nature. So we pitched the idea to the guards. We thought they will love this based on what they had told us about feeling somewhat marginalized within the institution based on our visitor feedback that the current uniforms, the navy blue blazers and slacks, kind of the traditional look, was really off-putting, sometimes even made people feel like they were in a bit of a police state. So we thought, this is a sure thing. The guards will love it. The guards hated it. It went over like a lead balloon. Disaster. We thought, we're gonna have to scrap this. There's no possible way that we can make this work. But we sensed that their complete distaste for the project was probably about something even bigger than these uniforms. And if nothing else, we really needed to engage in a dialogue to really figure out what was going on here. As for the uniforms themselves, it's no surprise now, we can see it clear as day. The guards felt like pawns in our art project. They felt instrumentalized in a very uncomfortable way. This is Lisa's work and they know it well. They did not want to wear something like this. So we spent the next year talking. We had a bucket of Trader Joe's pretzels, popcorn, drinks. We just sat around a table and kind of gabbed, tried to figure out what was going on. And the guards reported all of this to us, that they didn't want to look silly, that they thought that this was a very poor attempt to include them, and it became very evident we were totally out of touch with the condition of the guards. So Lisa, being the brave, sensitive artist that she is, decided to train as a security guard. And after her training, she actually went to work in the galleries. What she discovered there surprised us a great deal, and not in a good way. When she was in the galleries, her many friends at the museum who know her well walked right past her. Nobody looked her in the eye. Nobody said hello. She was invisible. She was also exhausted because for many of us, we're not on our feet all day, so we don't realize that this is incredibly taxing work. So back to the drawing board a year later, she presents a new idea to the guards that she calls United We Stand, and that is to buy them a whole new set of blazers. Each of them would choose a phrase about standing. That's Lisa, by the way, in the galleries. She looks very official. And we would ask them to write in their own penmanship that phrase about standing on a notebook paper. This is some examples of the phrases: get up, stand up, bystander, take a stand. You get the idea. We would then have those phrases from the paper transferred. This is Martin Starr, one of our guards. Another guard that chose the phrase understand. We would have these phrases sequined on the backs of the blazers. And by the time we got to the blazer fitting stage, we had developed enough trust. There was enough understanding that I dare say enthusiasm was beginning to percolate. Here is an example of one of the blazers. It was a pretty subtle project. It's not the kind of thing that that screams at you when you walk in the galleries, but the guards found that they had an incredible response. For the first time, our visitors spoke to them. Not only did they speak to them, they asked them questions. There was the exchange, there was the dialogue. They had their pictures taken. One guard reported that she had a visitor come up and ask her if she could take off the blazer because the visitor just wanted to know what it would feel like to wear something like that. Our visitor services department and also our guest book reported the same kind of information. Just guests totally thrilled. They found the work really provocative, and they engaged with an aspect of museum life that they had never engaged with before. So these are just some examples. I'll read one of them to you. Sometimes people feel left out, but now we feel involved in something interesting and successful. It loosened things up with visitors. We weren't just watching over the visitors. So by all accounts, by the account of the guards and by the account of our visitors, this had been really successful. But there was also something else quietly going on behind closed doors that the guards didn't know about. Lisa talked to us about the issue of standing in the galleries, how absolutely exhausting it was for the guards. And the museum then went and bought stools enough for every single post in every single gallery. And furthermore, we instituted a new exhibition policy that states that if you are a curator turning in a plan for your show, it must include stools for all of these posts, and if you have a contrary idea, take it up with the director. So on our last week of the project, which just wrapped up in April, so I'm sorry you couldn't see it in person, we told the guards, we've got stools for you. And here's a picture of sitting in United We Stand. I think that one of the great things about public engagement, and really about the Hammer Museum, because it's only within this culture that I actually think I could run a program like this, is that we have such incredible opportunity to experiment and try very new things. But I think the greatest gift often is how, through these artists, the thing that is beneath our very nose is often revealed. I just love the phrases that were emblazoned on the backs of these blazers. So many of them took on a new meaning for me by the end of it than even at the time when they wrote the phrases. So I'll leave you with one final phrase as we're wrapping up today and you're going on with your work, considering what's next for you. Fight the standard.